welcome to the Inside the Chain podcast show. Today I'm welcomed by Darby Thomas, Operations Director at AVK. Welcome Darby, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, you're welcome. So as always, I start off with my listener promise. And today that's going to be that you'll hear about what supply chain and resource risk looks like from the project delivery side of the table. So we're a 40-week generator lead time, a skill-short labour market, and a grid that can't keep up with data centre demand are all problems that have to be planned around before a single unit arrives on site. So listeners should come away with a clearer picture of how project managers and supply chain professionals are looking at the same problems from different angles, and why the relationship between them is becoming more critical as project scale grows. My framing line for the episode, it's about what supply chain and resource availability look like when you're not in a factory or a warehouse. You're managing £100 million plus projects, 57 generators, 40-week lead times, and a contracted labour market that's already running out of the people that you need. Most supply chain conversations start from inside the building, the warehouse, the factory, the procurement team. But Darby comes at it from somewhere different. The project manager's chair, sitting between a data center client who needs power by a fixed date, a specialist supply chain with limited capacity, and a labour market that genuinely might not have enough skilled people to deliver what the industry is building. And that's the conversation that we're having today. Finally, there's a three-part running order, which is broadly around industry and scale shift, from single generators to £100 million plus data center projects, the supply chain and resource, and those real constraints around project delivery. And then finally, the PMO view of supply chain risk and what it tells the wider audience. Here I'll get started with some questions, Darby. It was just met and got to talk, and you started out delivering single generators into hospitals, I believe, and now you're running a £100 million project with 57 generators, really giant scale for a data center. And my question is, what does that scale jump actually feel like from the project manager's chair?
Yeah, I guess even the smaller projects at the beginning felt big. You know, some UPS as well as generators into hospitals, apartment blocks, a multitude of different industries. So at the time, they felt big. Every time you went to a bigger KVA or a bigger monetary value, things just felt like they were growing constantly. So yeah, that they were big back in the day, and growing from company to company. Now at AVK, who are always, I guess, always on the horizon as one of the biggest in the industry, or the biggest in the industry.
Yeah.
Now, what we believe to be the leading in the industry that we're in, innovative power supplies, power solutions. But yeah, 57 generators into one site, it's more than I could ever have imagined. Never would have thought that we'd be doing projects this big.
Yeah. And as you say, at the time when you're starting out, it's everything that you know, and everything feels big. I suppose that's it. It's the scale that's just it's a scale that's larger. It's the supply chain network that's potentially larger. It's the risk that's larger. It's the people that you interface with, and that maybe takes more time, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. Programs and contracts and everything else you have to manage alongside it. Everything becomes more risky or more of a challenge, and certainly as it grows, you have to grow with it.
Yeah. I think that's a great point there. That growing with a trade and a skill set and a sector, it gives you the strength to be able to deliver such large scale projects. Looking at AVK, I mean, essentially a business built on continuity of supply. So this is 95% of what you do is standby power.
I'd say it's probably diverse a bit recently, in the last few years, but certainly was built on standby power. AVK is a multitude of different departments or companies within AVK. So there's a controls division, the service, load banks. There's critical critical team. We've got the microgrids, which is also another team. And now we've got power pods as well. So I would say we have evolved, and I think you have to try and stay ahead. And we want to grow, so we just keep on finding those avenues where we can add value to our offering, and the innovative part of it is definitely a big part. Power pods we see as a huge part of the business. It can help us grow even further.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's great to see that you have that related diversification still within in that sector. And yeah, as AVK continues to grow, the UK grid I've heard is saturated, and data centers can't get connection fast enough. How is that constantly shaping what AVK has been asked to do? And what does a microgrid solution actually look like on the ground?
So it's a real challenging one for the UK market, especially. The grid is constrained, and they're saying that people can be waiting 10 years for a grid connection, which is phenomenal, really. There's a concern that we may miss the boat. There's a lot of interest in this market right now, and if DCs can't get the power, DC operators can't get the power, then are they going to look at other markets in Europe rather than the UK? So with the two projects that we've got in Ireland at the moment, where we are installing microgrids, it comes with a BES unit. We've got the standby diesels on top of that as well. So we see it as a quicker way to market, a quicker way that the DC can get power to their site. But ultimately, they're still in line for a grid connection at some point. So it may be that the microgrid just fills that gap for the next few years, or they might decide to run independently going forward. And I think with that offering we have, there's fuel cells, there's BES units, there's a lot that goes into that, but the engineering side of that is what's critical, making sure you've got the plans and the designs correct to ensure that it's going to work. Because it's a big investment. It's a big investment that people need to go down to make sure they can get the right solution.
And that's where you come in, isn't it? I mean, it seems a shame to consider that we could be cutting our GDP growth because we don't have that critical infrastructure, but you can fill that gap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I understand that you're now following customers into Europe, Netherlands, the island. So that European expansion, that must bring its own logistical problems, as I'm aware of, tax problems, supply chain complexity. How are you managing that transition, and how are you building out the European supply chain to support it? Does that mean that you need a greater focus from European supply chains because of that geographical shift?
Yeah, when I joined AVK about 4 years ago, they were supporting some projects in Europe, and that's just grown over the last few years as our customers have had more sites within Europe. We like you say, followed them in there. So Netherlands, Germany, Portugal, Italy, in every region really, and that does bring a lot of challenges. So at the beginning, we were trying to do a lot of the supply chain was from the UK, and that comes with challenges. Generators are big, heavy, oversized loads, so getting them across the water into Europe and then transporting them through Europe is a challenge. So we are trying to grow our supply chain within Europe. We're trying to find people in mainland Europe who can build our containers, for example, or carry out our flue installations or M&E installations, crane lifts. So some of the services to get them from within the UK and have them working in Europe is a real challenge. And even the management of the projects from our point of view, finding people local to the sites that have the necessary experience is a challenge. We are a bit of a niche, being in generators especially, but we are doing a very good job at the moment of growing that team, bolstered by a lot of Irish as well. We've got a very good Irish contingent, and obviously they can travel through Europe a bit easier than we can from the UK.
That's great to hear. As a dual citizen, yeah, that's great to hear. So a 40-week lead time for a large generator sounds like a pretty big constraint. But you've described it to me before as it actually gives you time to plan. So how do you use that window, and what does a well-run program look like in that lead time period?
Yeah. So yeah, majority, roughly speaking, 40 weeks is the time we have for the generators to arrive and be containerized. So during that time, you should have ample time to go through your design in detail, your program and your sequencing in detail, what dependencies you need from the GC. Quite often, sites do get delayed as well, so you end up maybe with a little bit more time. But that's why it's critical to make sure that you're having regular meetings on site with the necessary people. Logistically, make sure they know when the generators are coming, what time you need on site to be able to get those lorries in, offloaded, because you can quite often block up the whole goods routes. Goods coming into site, you might say, I need that goods in and goods out route for the whole week while you're trying to get your generators in. Crane lifts, your crane takes up a lot of space as a big crane, and then making sure that you have all the dependencies needed. So, for example, the general contractor maybe bringing you the power supplies or running the cables out from your generator to their switchgear. It's making sure that's planned in correctly so that you're not working on top of each other, making sure that there's enough time in the program to be able to allow that cable installation to happen and then go through your QA/QC and commissioning process. So having the 40 weeks really does help. It should allow you the time to really plan the project, and obviously not everything goes to plan, but it gives you a really good head start on where things should be.
Yeah, and for me, and touching upon the start and the listener promise, where that relationship between, as that scale grows, that relationship between PMO and supply chain just needs to be really strong, doesn't it? And because you get that overview of all the moving parts that need to be sequenced, orchestrating the dance is no mean feat with so many conflicting stakeholders. You need to know that when you planned it, everything needs to sort of slot into place, doesn't it? Otherwise, it can cause such problems. Only looking back to the Red Sea tanker, one tanker blocking absolutely everything. It can be the same, one vehicle blocking a whole site. And yeah, we certainly don't want that happening. So you're now reserving manufacturing slots with suppliers months in advance. Your competitors are fighting for that same capacity. What does that supplier relationship look like? How do you stay at the front of the queue?
My first day at AVK was very interesting. I came into a meeting where we had multiple suppliers in a room with all the programs for multiple projects laid out on the table, and we were almost selecting in the room who was going to do which projects and who could meet the programs that we were demanding. And it's not a position I've been in before. From maybe doing a couple of gens on a site, maximum maybe 3-4 generators, where the lead times were a bit shorter and really there wasn't such a squeeze. Whereas now, because of the quantity of the projects we're doing and the quantity of generators per project we're doing, we need to have that foresight. So quite often we are way in advance booking slots with container manufacturers. We know the generators with our partner through Rolls-Royce MTU. So we know from that when they're going to land. So we need to select tank manufacturers, container manufacturers, and in advance we're saying between the 3 business units within AVK that are delivering projects, who's best suited to that job, and we're sort of working as a team to say, okay, if you're going to be going down that road, we need to think about this one. And the strategy in it, there's a lot of strategic thinking about who's best suited, who's logistically in a better place, or who's technically better and got the capacity as well.
Wow, that just reminds me of a story I was told just yesterday, by the great Jamie Jones Buchanan, of ex-lead Rhinos player and now chief exec there. Talking, he made the point that I think when the Hoover Dam was built back in the was it in the Depression of the 20s, 30s in the States, nobody could consider it was too big to do. It wasn't possible. But as I understand it, as he told the story, 5 or 6 companies who were in that market all got together and said exactly what you're delivering now. Who's best suited to do which part of it, and that takes that's the project management part of it, isn't it? Bringing those skill levels and competencies together and thrashing out what the art of the possible is. And it was delivered under budget and instead of 6 years in 5, I understand. So yeah,
Right.
a good PMO structure of managing it certainly makes things happen, doesn't it? Great, that's great to hear. I hear this a lot across sectors. Skills labour, electricians, mechanical installers, engineers it seems to be getting so restricted and tight, and it looks like it's not going to be improving anytime soon. It's getting worse. How bad is that problem from your viewpoint? What you see
Internally, employee wise, we're more of a management company. So for example, the M&E install, we wouldn't do that in house. We'd subcontract that out. But the actual management, so the project managers, junior PMs, senior PMs, that's the bit that we are trying to get ahead of the game. We're trying to employ people that are wanting to come into the industry or want to become a project manager and bring them through, because we can already see where the work is going to be. You know, we already know what the demand is, and we've got a forecast now to say where the team's going to move when certain projects finish, and thankfully we're in a position where we know where our orders are for probably the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So we know which projects we're going to be working on, what locations are, what the need is, and then we can move the chess pieces around to suit each project, and also where we need to fill the gaps. In terms of supply chain, it has been a challenge. You know, these I'd say are probably our top 20 suppliers have been with AVK and the industry when we're doing 2s, 3s, 4s to now doing 57s. So they had to grow with us, but the growth that they've probably followed the same curve, but maybe just a slightly behind where we were. So we've gone to the point where we had to put additional resource on every single project. You know, our whole management structure has changed at AVK. Commercial team is so much bigger than it was. Design team's huge, massive. So I think with that, we're now seeing the orders that we might have placed for hundreds of thousands of pounds are now becoming millions with our supply chain. So we're saying to them, you need to have a non-working supervisor, a project manager, which is something they probably haven't had before.
Yeah.
But the orders are that big, and the contracts are that big, and the programs are that tight, that they have to have this in place in order for us all to succeed.
And isn't it better to have that, as you said, work back from you've got your foresight of the next 2 or 3 years of volume and demand, and then breaking it down into understanding, well, what do I need to actually run that? What are the heads that I need in what positions? Being able, as you say, it's a chess game there, isn't it? If you can see that and you can plan ahead, you're far better structured to be able to win and able to deliver and execute successfully.
Yeah, and AVK, I would say, probably like most generator companies, the project managers were predominantly based in the office, and they would go to site, so many times throughout the project. Where we're at now is we're now a fundamental part of that project, and there we need site presence all the time. So we are, even the PMs that we've got employed, their roles almost changed slightly because they're now site based rather than office based.
Yeah,
and it has been a learning curve for us all, I think.
But you're right. You can't be being close to where the work is done. There's a continuous improvement technique called Gemba. It's a Japanese word for go where the work is done, and that's it. That sometimes you just have to be at that level, don't you? And it to control and be on be really close to anything that shifts, as you said, with so many dynamic parts to the dance.
Yeah.
You can't be removed, can you? You can't be removed from it. You need to be finger on the pulse, I think.
I think that's also going to benefit the people that are coming into the industry or want to become PMs. That's where you learn the most, is being on site and seeing the issues more than anything. You learn from
Yeah,
the things that go wrong.
yeah,
So sitting in an office and hearing about an issue is completely different to being in front of it and seeing it happen. So, and always felt like that's where I learned best, was being amongst it, or being
yeah,
in the weeds, or being put into a situation where you maybe not so comfortable and you have to learn. And I think that
yeah.
people that have come into the industry, I've got one junior PM on my team, for example, that before he joined, I said, you are going to be on site every single day. It's going to be long hours. It's going to be grueling, but that's the way you're going to learn. And the progression already in less than a year has been fantastic for him. And I think there's others very, very similar. The more you're there amongst it, the more you see, the more you're going to learn and progress.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. The greatest learning is through that adversity, through the challenges, through the having to think. That it's been out of your comfort zone. There is a working in that stretch area is where it's great to be. But from a personal viewpoint, that's where the learning is. So it's great to hear that you're delivering on that. Um, so when I look at your work with supply chain partners, to help them think about the resource, say 30 weeks ahead, from a supply chain perspective, um, how's that demand signal going out to your sort of contractor network or supply chain network? How does that work in practice?
So I guess up front during our tendering process, we're already thinking about who's best placed for this
Yeah,
project within the supply chain. So we're already looking at who we think would be best suited to that project technically, who's got the capacity, make sure we're not overstretching anybody. So then when it becomes an actual contract with my team, we've already got a head start of knowing who the sales and estimating team have already said, okay, we've been talking to this company, they've already helped with the design, they've already committed to the dates that we can achieve. So that does help, but there are changes. Sometimes it comes to the project and we say, well, actually, we've got a lot of risk in that area already. Let's find another road, or maybe technically this one maybe is better suited to another company. So that happens at point of order, I guess, and
yeah.
hand over to my team, and then managing that going through the program is regular visits, regular meetings, regular feedback, and progress reports from the supply chain.
It's so critical, isn't it? It's great to hear that there's pre-work is done before, there's that pre-work, the market engagement's done before you, and setting up, understanding bills of materials and material requirements. But then really importantly, once that's passed, the baton is passed to your team, it needs managing, doesn't it? If you just forget about it and think it'll be fine, I think you're gonna get bitten, aren't you? So yeah, having some good touch points and cadences around, are we on target, just keeps people focused, I think, as well, and keeps the supply chain focused. Um, you told me again previously when we were talking that you've brought in a junior PM, for instance, and we touched upon this about the skilled labour from a junior PM from the Marines, and I suppose that what's the thinking behind recruiting from non-traditional backgrounds, and what does it tell us about the talent pipe, as we touched upon the talent pipeline, um, from the industry, the challenge that's facing, and are you looking at you're looking at not just skills but behaviours as well when you're looking at people to come and join the team?
Yeah, the personality is absolutely key. If somebody's driven and wants to be a project manager, or be a certain role within the business, that's always going to help. And I think no matter what transferable skills or technical ability they've already got, they've got to have the right personality to be able to. It's a tough industry, construction, isn't it? And
Yeah,
construction in data centers is
yeah,
even more so because your programs are so aggressive. So
yeah,
I think as a business, you need to set that standard during that interview process. You need to make them understand what they're getting themselves into. It is relentless, but at the same time, that should also weed out the people you think that are going to be dedicated
yeah,
to it, and then support them. And any new employee needs so much time to be able to integrate into the team they're in and the business. We're working in teams, so these people might only see 10 to 20 people for the first 6 months, but actually the company's nearly 400 people. So when you get as a company day, they get to meet all these other people that they've never even spoke to before. So yeah, I think it is personalities. You need to definitely hire personalities and fits for the teams they're going to be working with.
That's it. It's something I've been discussing recently. You can have the best technical skills in the world, but if you can't get on with your team members and you can't actually interface, then you're you're not a good candidate. We need to work in teams, don't we? And as you say, to be clear and open and honest up front about what it's going to be like, it's just so important as well. It's so important, isn't it, to be able to tell them it's going to be tough. But it's if you're awarded by that graft and that sense of achievement that comes at the end of it, it's hopefully a win-win then, isn't it?
Yeah, and listen, it sounds good if you're working on working in a team that's running up to £400 million worth of work, delivering multiple gigawatts of generators. It's an interesting place to be, and data centers themselves are definitely a hot topic at the moment, aren't they? It seems like the boom of the industry is really great. So there's a lot of
very exciting times ahead for people who join. Like these are large scale projects, and we know that they generally suffer delays at points throughout that delivery program. How do you protect your program commercially and operationally when something upstream slips? And are there any lessons that you could pass on for people there?
I always think, I guess the main thing is being open and honest, especially, if we've had an issue or if the customer's had an issue, it's talking about what the consequence could be. And if that's items are sitting in storage for a bit longer, or, is there an option to get generators on site, even though the site might not be quite ready? Is there somewhere, there's a holding bay nearby? There's lots of different ways of trying to mitigate that. Ultimately, we've all got contracts still, haven't we, that we need to meet or need to manage through the contract. And it's always a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
But that's why contracts are there, aren't they? Protect you, protect them. It works both ways.
Really, really important, aren't they, to have that right skill level and oversight within the contracts to make sure that hopefully we want it to be fair, and it must be fair and proportionate, mustn't it? But yeah,
and we also if we've got a situation where a project, the site has been slightly delayed, generators are in storage, so we're trying to see what we can do up front before they come to site. So can we do any additional testing up front, which could then save some time on site? And the customers are quite open to that. They'd rather have as much tested off-site as possible. Now, there's always a playoff between if you do this much testing off-site, they still want some site testing, and you might be doubling up. It might be more cost. So there has to be a line of agreement. But for everyone's benefit, if you can test more off-site, it's going to be more efficient.
Yeah, I think that's a great little takeaway there in and of itself. Yeah, can you still work the asset in some way and make some value from it rather than having it in a storage space sitting there? Yeah, good point. Really good point. And from a project manager's perspective, how do you define supply chain risk, and is it different from how a supply chain professional would define it?
Supply chain risk is, like I say, with us growing so quickly and having to take our supply chain with us, and we and our competitors are probably using very similar supply chain or the same supply chain, so we're all fighting for the same slots. We had one example where one of our supply chain actually caused a bit of a problem on a site on a bit of equipment, and they're a critical supplier of ours, and we could have gone down a very harsh contractual road, and maybe even it might have folded. Is that serious? We chose to support them, and we had to actually replace some of the equipment that had been damaged. So we actually purchased that new equipment up front whilst they went through the insurance company. But obviously we still had a program to meet. We still wanted to try and progress, but it could have easily gone a different way. If we didn't see the value in them, we could have gone down a litigation route, and they probably would have folded. But we know the value in the supply chain, and we know the people that we need to be working with, and we have such a good relationship with our supply chain, and I hope that they feel like they can come to us with problems or with issues that we can maybe help with.
Um, I, Darby, for me, that speaks to my heart of how we should consider partnerships and supply chains, because, you know, we're only as strong as our weakest link. If we're taking partners out of that market, and what are we, what's the risk that you're going to import then? If you can work with your supply base to work through problems, it's just it can create such a strong relationship moving forwards, because um, we don't forget that as people do, and when we help each other out, and it's nothing different at scale, is it? We're all people working together, hopefully, to try and achieve
Yeah,
something exciting together. That's a really good way of looking at it. Thank you. Well, it's good to hear that you were able to work together and work through that as well, and support.
I guess it probably helps as well from a personal level. When you've been working with these people over 16, 17, 18 years, you have got a relationship with them outside of work anyway. If I
Yeah,
saw them somewhere and you'd stop and say hello, it's not just a work relationship. So even jumping from company to company, 3 companies I've worked in this industry in power generation, and we've still got the same supply chain. There's still people I've
yeah.
spoke to or maybe re-linked with since I've been back at AVK. So it's good.
I think there's a real strength in those partnerships, those relationships that are built up over time. Um, and the last few questions now. So, data center boom, creating demand that the supply chain and labor market may not be able to meet. And what's that meaning to project timelines, project cost, and how the industry needs to think about capacity planning?
I think up front we have to be honest, and not just AVK, as in the whole supply chain to the DCs. If a lot of them are signing up to dates that are then tied to some serious penalties. So yeah,
Yeah,
and you have to, from us to the GCs to everybody, you need to make sure it is buildable in that time. And I think that's why early commitment from us, from our supply chain, knowing exactly where the work's going to go and being strategic on who's going to work on what project is the key. Making sure that we can deliver what we're signing up to.
yeah, really strong point there. And again, it's coming back to that, coming back to talking, isn't it? It's coming back to communicating. It's coming back to having your finger on the pulse, that as a business, you have the right structures and teams in place to be able to have these conversations, because you've got the demand outlook, because you can see where not just raw material resources are required, but those skill set resources are required as well. Bringing all that together, all the all that all those dynamic moving parts, but actually having the foresight to have it planned, and having um, grown up conversations around it. And as you said again, the honesty of being able to say, look, here's the gap, here's a shortfall, guys. We need, this is a priority we have to work on.
Yeah, you don't help anybody out by overcommitting, and then that's what
Yeah,
we
no,
try and say all along. Yeah, from the sales stage, there's no point us selling a lie. If we can't hit the time, then we'll just cause ourselves a problem. So we need to be
yeah,
honest about what is achievable.
it's great to hear. I think are you looking at Freeport status? I remember is it the Haydock facility?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
what's that in place to solve, and what yeah, without getting too political, but what does that tell us about certain frictions in cross-border project supply chains, maybe post-Brexit? Because these are
yeah.
these are factual considerations for that scale and that growth, aren't they? These are the things that you don't necessarily think about. Maybe last year, the year before, they come and start hitting you, don't they?
Yeah, I'm not overly involved in the Freeport status or Haydock at the moment, but we do. Our main supplier, our supply agreement with Rolls-Royce, German built generators that are coming into the UK quite often to be packaged into a container and then shipped back out to Europe. So having a Freeport status there will certainly have a lot of paperwork and hopefully a lot of VAT on imports.
Y- Yeah, and that's the crux of it, isn't it? Just speeds it up, doesn't it? And in an already not, I don't want to say heavily restricted, but the timelines need to be met. We're talking about, you could be talking big L&Ds if it's on LDs if it's on you for delays. So anything that you can do to sort of speed that up, not least of all the paperwork, and taking some of that the cash flow and cost transitions out of it, just makes sense at certain scales or with certain volumes of importing goods.
Yeah, and quite often you have to pay the VAT on the goods coming into the UK. You can't claim that back for quite some time, and it's just a case of deferring money that
another cash flow constraint. So the net gain is it's the same, but it's just that it hits that cash flow, which makes really good sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So all the best to AVK with those steps. And yeah, thanks a lot for the time today. My closing question is for supply chain and operational professionals who don't usually work in project management based environments. And I'm not saying that you've got an exposure to their side of the fence, but what's one insight from the PM's world that would most change how they think about resource risk and planning?
Oh, it's a good question.
Golden nugget.
Yeah, I think it is having the strategy, but building those relationships with your customers and your supply chain to know where the next projects are going to be or what timeline the next project's going to be on, and then strategically looking at your own supply chain, your own workforce, having that foresight to know where people are going to be or what projects you're going to be working on. It just helps flatten any risk. And that really is the key. The communication and the relationships with your suppliers and your customers.
And I'm going to say that is a superb answer, really, to the question. Yeah, flatten the risk, build those relationships. I mean, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Well, wrapping up this episode of Inside the Chain podcast show, I just want to say a real big thank you to you, Darby, and AVK for letting us do this, and continued success. And I'm really excited to have learnt myself about what you do, about the sector. It's so interesting, and there are real lessons to learn from the warehouse, the production facility, taking your viewpoints on board.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.